Viewers and listeners are advised that this episode of Queeritage may contain items that you may find triggering. If you would like further support, please contact joe@hereandI.org. So, welcome, Paul, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on our wee podcast, Queeritage.
Come in.
So, we're here today with Paul McVeigh, the writer, and we're going to talk about that in a wee bit. But Paul would like to start at the start. You're from Belfast,
From Belfast, yes.
so
Ardoyne. I was born in Ardoyne.
Ardoyne.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many years ago? Or is that a secret?
No, it's not a secret at all. I'm, well, 1968. So,
Okay. So it was early days in terms of
yeah, God.
being gay. It was before it
Yeah.
was legal. So for those of you young ones who don't know, it used to be illegal to be a gay man.
But when I was
And
born, in fact, it was still
yes,
illegal to be me.
yep, me too, until I was about seven. But
Yeah.
so yeah, decriminalization didn't happen until 1981, 82.
hmm
Um, so you grew up in Ardoyne,
Mm.
and what was that like? What was your childhood like?
Well, I think what people, well, younger generations wouldn't sort of find it hard to imagine, I think, is that really we were closed in our community. So you even didn't really go very much outside of your community. Maybe on a Saturday, your mummy would take you into town, but really you were kept in your community. I mean, I lived in Ardoyne, and there was like at the top of my street there was like a barrier blocking us to going into like behind Lions Avenue in the Deer Park, and at the bottom of my street it became it was Flax Street, and there was barriers there that stopped you go up into the Crumlin Road. And then, and if in Ardoyne, there was, you were basically surrounded by Protestant areas. There was, the Deer Park, the Shankill, the Crumlin, and and then, what's that called? I can't remember what that area was called anyway. So basically, you were sort of surrounded. There was a very much a mentality that, you sort of stayed to your streets. And the result of that was that what most gay young when you try to get out of your area, you try to get away from the people who know you to be yourself.
Yeah,
And you tried, when the first thing I did, and I think a lot of people in my generation did, was get out of Belfast. Like they went to London, they went to all these places where it was like they would be anonymous and then they could live this life, you know, um, and that they didn't feel that they could in Northern Ireland. And but within that desire to get out and get away from people to be yourself was really strong, but yet you were sort of contained within a few streets, really. So, and the other result of being contained within a few streets, so you really couldn't really express yourself or kind of, is it, difference of any kind wasn't tolerated.
yeah.
So anything you did that stood out, you'd become like the focus of everybody's attention because it was a bit like being in an open air prison. You
So
saw the same people every single day. You got up and you played the same, and they were those people, and they you saw them, and and the church, for like the Catholic Church, is like a bulletin board, you know what I mean? Like, so everybody met there, and then and the parents told other parents what the other kids were getting on to. They were left their street and went to other streets, and everybody would send things around like, oh, your son was seen around playing Nestale, and was he doing around there? And so you really didn't get away with anything. So
do,
that.
do you recall a time when you kind of figured you were different, that might have been gay when you were growing up?
Um, well, I knew I always knew I was different because I wasn't like, the other boys, and I did, I hated, I didn't want to do football, and I wanted to do all those other things. And I was like, I loved running, and I loved other things, and my wee sister was my best friend. So I think that was a very telling thing because that's not really tolerated either.
Yeah,
So, once it's okay up to a certain age, and then suddenly, no, you're not allowed to play with your sister, and you should be playing with a boy then.
yeah.
And even on the
Playing
streets,
schooling.
yeah, and on the streets, particularly all summer, because there's 9 weeks of summer, you were literally like through. I mean, back in the day, here's the other thing: you were thrown out in the street at 8 o'clock in the morning once you had your breakfast. Maybe you got to watch about an RTV or something, Saturday morning TV, whatever. But I mean, in the summer holidays, there's all that great TV, but you were thrown out of the house and you didn't come back till your dinner. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so, you played in packs. on the streets.
Yeah.
And so that was a very so it's the whole culture was different. So you were just under everybody's gaze constantly. And then therefore if you hung around and then I hung around with the girls. I was the only boy to do that. And so it was really obvious to everybody that I wasn't one of the boys. And I just thought girls were nicer, funnier, better friends, and they played better games and things like that, So and so I always knew it was different, but I can't say that I was attracted to boys, but I knew I was more like a girl
Yeah.
in terms of I was more emotionally led and sort of and
You like the things that they liked.
yeah, I mean I wasn't into playing with dolls or I wasn't into but I liked primarily my wee sister actually was really what it was about. And then that was all primary school sort of age. But when I went to secondary school, that all that dynamic really changed because that it's all Northern Ireland, of course, you're segregated in religion and by gender. And so it was all boys' school, and at that point, but oh God, oh God. So you not there was so there was a guy at school in my primary school who was who turned out to be gay. Do you know what I mean? Of course, we didn't know we were gay. Well, I didn't anyway. But I mean, but I just knew I was different, and so basically in this school of like, oh God, how many people would there have been? I don't know, but 5 years of boys with testosterone and all running around fighting each other. And us four or five found each other, and we were definitely all gay. Do you know what I mean? But now I know that. But then it was just like, pardon me. So yeah, so we, in school you sort of gravitated towards you sort of found your kind of
Your tribe.
your tribe, and of course we were sort of. And so we choose a little, and everyone had chose their part. There was a big fields around us and stuff. It was a really, really, really rough school. St. Gabriel's, which I know is now closed down and stuff, and good for it to be closed down. By the way, it was a terrible place for lots of things. But anyway, yeah. So everybody found their wee part in the playgrounds, and so we had a wee part there. And by and large, we were left alone. I mean, but if we get into any, more by, of course, people who wanted to pick on you sort of thing. But then but even then, I didn't fancy any of my peers. There was nobody in school that I thought, oh God, he's gorgeous or something like that. I didn't have any of those experiences at all. I knew that on TV, now there might have been super, like what do you call it, television stars or something I might have gone that I wouldn't even necessarily fancied, but I knew I'd go, I can't take my eyes off that person. But I didn't necessarily, wasn't be thinking I want to go into bed with them or I want to have sex with them. But then I wasn't thinking about sex at all, really. But maybe I was a bit of a late bloomer when it comes to all that. And certainly when I dated girls and I dated girls after school, dated girls at college, and dated girls through my 30s into my 40s. I mean, I still I kind of really loved women. I had like five sisters and a mom who I absolutely adored. And so I think my love of women was like uh could become love, sexual love, or whatever you want to call that, romantic love
Yep.
at times in my life because I just loved them so much, and that the sex was an extension of that love, and I never questioned it. I never tried to justify myself about it, and but as I've gotten older, I mean I've that those that I mean I'd say the last time it probably happened was when I was about 40, maybe about 15, 20, nearly 17 years ago. And most of the other time, and my big long relationships as an adult have been with men, and I'm exclusively with men now. That's like 10, 15 years, and yeah.
So did you have like a coming out experience? Was there a point where you
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was quite funny. It was well, actually, it wasn't. It was quite tragic. It was a really terrible, terrible. These were terrible times. So I was going out with a guy who I was in London, and he unfortunately had a terrible situation because his he had gone out with someone who then blackmailed him with his family. And that was in London. I mean, like, so it wasn't just like in Northern Ireland that we were way behind, and therefore, we were even more closeted and more worried. Even places like London, there's still, I mean, even, later in life. So I would have been about 30, I guess. So about 25 years ago, he lived in London. He was so afraid of coming out, he would tell his parents. He ended up getting blackmailed, and he ended up taking some money from work to pay off this blackmailer, and he got caught and sent to prison. It was awful. It was my ex, and he then, in this awful, stupid way that people do, that not stupid, sorry, but a traumatized person does, he ended up doing not something similar to me. Was that it was someone who's had that done to them sort of does that to someone else? Does that make sense? It's like a terrible sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
when I broke up with him, he threatened to fly back to Belfast and tell my parents I was gay. And I was like, where the hell does that come from? And he was acting so crazy at the time. We'd been together for years, and I think he just I don't know, something inside him just snapped or something. But anyway, I flew home to tell my parents. No, they don't they'd met girls I dated before. They'd even met guys I dated before who I'd taken home from London to stay, but I'd never said that we were partners or anything. And and so I took my mum and dad out to lunch and just said, like, listen, that I've gone out with girls or something, like, and I've gone out with guys as well. My mum was just like, oh, pass the salt, for the soup. That soup's not very salty. And they just, and that was it. It was like, and you know what? It was such a relief because I don't want to sit and talk, sit and talk to my parents about my sex life or my, or my love life. But
yeah,
after that, it was really nice. There's these lovely little moments that are like we never discussed it again, and except one time at Christmas, I remember coming home and bringing a present from my mom back that I knew my mom had really wanted, and I said, "Oh, that's from myself and Dave," and she's like, "Did that wee boy to put something in for that present?" And I said, "She went," and so probably about once or twice after that, she'd say. I'd come home. I'd never bring them home because I didn't want to put them in that sort of situation. But I mean, as stay in my parents' house and have that whole thing. I think,
awkwardness.
for me personally, I think things are very different now, and that's lovely. And but then it was just too much. They were elderly at that point as well, so it's a lot to ask. My mum was very religious, and anyway, but she was smart because then once or twice after she said to me something like, uh, and how's your wee friend? And like, but with
Yeah,
that look that said,
we your boyfriend
what
was
I'm saying is your boyfriend.
yeah.
And that was massive. That was probably, that was a massive thing. And but yeah, those are the days.
What age would you have been at that stage when you were kind of flew home to come out?
Oh, I was probably about 30. But my my family and my loved ones knew that I went with men and women um from when I was at university. Like I told all of them, I just said, look, you should know this. And they were like, what? And I was living in London. My sister and brother lived in London at the time, and they both met my partners and stuff, and all those kind of things. Came to stay with me and my partner. My sisters from London, Belfast would fly over to London for little trips away and stay with me and my partner. So everyone knew. It was just really coming out. Really, I associate with meaning to my parents. Because
Okay.
it wasn't one thing where I came out with everyone together and held a party or something. I mean, it was one by
Everyone
one
knew.
over a period of time, when it was appropriate and when it was natural and when it was needed. But I didn't find that. I mean, it was difficult, nervous bringing it up to my mom and dad, but I wasn't really nervous about anyone else. I always had a sort of, I think, a confidence about who I was, and yeah,
So were you living in London at that time?
yeah.
And then when did you come back to
I
Belfast?
came back to Belfast probably about 7, 8, maybe 8 years ago, something.
Okay, so was that a bit of a shock to the system compared to your childhood? Because when you were saying your mum would have taken you into town on Saturdays when you were a child, that would have been when they still had the Ring of Steel
Oh
and the
God, yeah. Well,
checkpoints
look, I
and
was
the
coming home all the time. I mean, like I
right.
have a really large family, and we were super close. And so, at one point, I was coming home once a month. Like once a month, I'd come home. Like we were a really close family. So I'd seen Belfast, grow and
Over the
change all over that
time.
time. Yeah, and I obviously because of the gay world as well. I mean, that was hilarious. I remember when I first, would go into town, and and I think it was so dangerous. I don't know that I've heard anyone ever say that, but it was a really dangerous, dodgy thing to do, to go into town and then try and get home again. Because if you stayed out past the last bus, and unless you had money to get a taxi, which I mean, I was a really poor working class guy, So I would often go out and, I'd have enough for like a pint or 2 pints or something like that, and then, walk home, from town. And now you're talking about walking through multiple Catholic and Protestant areas late at night during the Troubles on your own. And you're like 17, 18, and you're first trying to explore all of that, and you're walking by any guy or any group of guys going from one area to another. Like, I mean, you were taking your life in your hands. It was absolutely insane, but you
Yeah.
did it because you were desperate to explore that part of yourself, and you had to keep it so well contained all the rest of the time. And then even I remember really it was the Crow's Nest was the only bar that I remember. And it was only in my memory, it was only gay on a Saturday night. And it was only gay on Saturday night after about 9 o'clock.
Right.
So you could go down. I remember going down once, during the day on a Saturday, it's completely straight, and I remember going down about 7 o'clock on a Saturday one time because, I wanted to try to get home early. And it doesn't. So the reason that you sort of had to push yourself late was because it only got gayer as the night went on. I think for
Right.
a number of reasons. I think, the straight people started to leave because they knew it was starting to get a bit gayer and they started to see the gay people around. Two, I think, people were waiting until after dark
Yep.
because they would not be seen going in there. And the other reason I don't is like people getting drunk enough to go in
To get the confidence
because
of.
you're not going to go in there sober because you couldn't handle that because of your nerves and anxiety. Who's going to see you? What's going to be in there? Is there someone going to be in there that you know? Is there there's all these things, and also I'm exploring my sexual and doing this kind of illegal, dodgy thing, and so I mean, I often think about that, when people say about the party scene and how gay people are, so into drugs and drinking and things like that. And I think, well, I think a lot of that came from, the fact that it was so it was so anxious making being you, it was such an anxiety that and you were made to sort of hate yourself so much that of course you wanted to kind of get off your face. And it was the only way, you could have sex with someone else was to be kind of drunk because, it was like, and so I think we have a real big generation of that, where, you know, they barely ever had sex sober because they couldn't justify who they were.
Yep.
It's a really massive thing, and I don't think it's talked
Absolutely.
about enough. I think people think it is people, gay people drinking have drugs because everything's fabulous and their lives are, and so they're so decadent and all. And
Yeah.
actually, I think it goes much much deeper than that, and no one talks about it. And I think it's a big conversation, but perhaps
Uh,
not for this morning.
no, you're 100% right because the one of the studies that the Rainbow Project had did was about that, and the type of they were gay people were more likely to take drugs, but the type of drugs that they were taking were more sedatives and things to take the edge off rather than party drugs. So you're 100% right, and the majority of the counseling referrals were for internalized homophobia
Yeah.
to deal with all that guilt and shame
Yep.
that was thrown at us from
Yeah.
the press,
Yep.
the religious, the pulpit every Sunday. It was coming at you from all
Yeah.
directions.
And in school and in work, in your
School,
workplace, it's every,
yep,
excuse me, it's everywhere. And I have this discussion with people a lot because, um, you know, especially online, I've done a couple of things and projects and stuff, and more or less get this attitude back of like, shut up, what are you complaining about? Didn't you get everything you wanted?
yep,
What the fuck have you got to complain about now? And you're throwing it all this kind of stuff, and I say, oh really? Well, why is it then that we make up 10% of the population, but 40% of the homeless are LGBT? If everything's great and everything's fantastic and we're so accepted, and what they're saying is the LGBT youth, you know, make up like 40% of the homeless, right? And you
wow,
go, why? Because their parents hate them so much that they would rather see their kids living on the streets, getting into drugs, getting into prostitution, dying younger, getting diseases, all of this, than accept who they love. And you're telling me there's nothing to complain about or campaign about. And I think those are the things that I get cross about sometimes because I think, where's the campaigning on that? Campaigning on what word you're going to use about something, and that'll get you all completely gone mental and how you're something to whatever. I mean, and I get it and all that, but what about those kids who are living on the streets and who are being turned out? 80% of LGBT youth seriously consider killing themselves. Seriously consider killing themselves. So if everything's so fantastic, why is that then?
Yeah.
And there is a real disparity between the on-brand marketing of gay life and the reality of it.
Yeah.
And they're all running around thinking they're in Heartstopper and everything's brilliant, and they're all running around, this is hard, this is hard. It's not. I mean, it may be for, and particularly if you're working class as well, there's a real big difference, I think, between middle class, everybody's running around holding hands, talking about, their feelings, and,
Yeah.
and working class people who traditionally hold stuff back and don't talk about things and are much more stuck in sort of gender boundaries and what behavioral boundaries and
Masculinity and
masculinity and things
femininity.
and
Yeah.
and for good and bad in some ways, you know what I mean? Because there's a real stoicism there and there's a real kind of power and kind of tradition. And I think, but there's also, but like everything, there's good and bad in everything, and it's a really, it's a difficult one. But those are the things that shock me. Those kind of statistics, and so I try to say to people, like this marketing of gay, it's a bit like the difference between what pride was and what pride is. It's the same thing with gay and gay. It's gone from being something to be pitied, or disgusted by, to something that's all fabulous
Marketable.
and
Yeah.
running around and can we make money out of it?
Yeah.
And it's like, where are the real lives in there? Yes, there is queer joy, but there's a lot of really horrible things as well. And it's almost like, oh God, I have to be really careful what I say. I'm going to get me into trouble. But there's all these things, there's all this stuff where, if you're like if you're an older gay man now, you're not allowed to be unhappy.
Yeah, because
You
you've had all of your
you
rights.
you've
You've
had
you've done
you've
everything.
had your life as hard. Great. How did you get those rights? Because because we did, but also it's not so much that though, in fairness. What angers me is, or that I think is again, it's not said enough, is this, you know, queer joy. Let's talk about queer joy. If you want funding or something, talk about queer joy. If you want to have your play put up, talk about queer joy. If you want to have your thing, it has to be queer joy. No one
Yeah.
wants to hear about unhappy gay people anymore.
Yep.
And it's like, but what do unhappy gay people do? If we're not allowed to say we're unhappy, we're being policed by our own community to not talk about it.
Yeah. You've been
And
censored.
we're being censored. We're being told. I found it in a couple of projects I've tried to do in the last couple of years where I've gone to people and say, "But this isn't queer joy," and I said, "Well, isn't because it's not fucking joyful." Oops, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Beep, beep. Because it's not. I mean, being loneliness for an older gay man is a massive thing. It always has been a big thing, and it
Yeah.
still is a big thing.
And there is a name for that, which is emerging in the kind of the Reiki and the healing circles,
Yeah,
called toxic positivity,
yeah.
where you're not allowed to be unhappy. You
You're
have to
not
be.
allowed.
Uh,
And
oh,
older gay men are not allowed. We are
yeah.
not. It's no longer. I said those are stories we don't want to tell anymore. Those stories are old and they're boring. Well, I'm really sorry if I'm boring. I'm really sorry if my life or my pain is boring to you. But your pain, like your outrage at this thing, I'm supposed to get on board with. But my pain is not on brand, and that's exactly what it feels. It feels like if you want to have your voice heard and tell a story and have a play on or be part of this or do these things, if you're not going to talk about queer joy, we're not interested. Well, it's giving a really false impression of what life is like for a start. They're all the same story because everybody's running about being really joyful and having a gig. So where's the variety in there? And where are the older people's voices? Or not just older, that's just one example because I can talk on that as personally as an older man. I won't talk for other people, but I think, I just worry about that, and I worry about all of these things that are going on, like those statistics on, seriously considering suicide, that they end up homeless, that all of these terrible things, and where are we shining a light on that? Because that isn't joyful, and the people who are running around having a laugh don't really need us to be amplifying their voices because they're everywhere in having a laugh, and it's great. and they're really happy and having a great time. So maybe the people that need an assist and whose voices need to be like, amplified and also and listened to and given serious weight to are the people who are unhappy and who are struggling and who are still dealing with all those things, but seem to be out of fashion. Mm.
So that's a massive difference you see now in the today's culture
Mm.
compared to when you were growing up and coming out
Yeah,
and
definitely. Just this, yeah. But I mean, I mean, listen, it's great. I mean, obviously. I've had my years of like having a great time, and going out and clubbing, and I love it. I mean, I was one of those guys that sort of clubbed right into their like 40s. I was still the last guy on the dance floor, and I mean, you couldn't get me to leave. The cleaners would be mopping the floor around my feet while whatever, and they would just usually let me just keep going until they had to throw me out. So I was a massive and massive party. So I think, that's wonderful. And I love that joyful part of our lives. And I took absolute advantage of it. Like, you know,
so do you remember Miss May in the Crow's Nest?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Crow's Nest being like, I don't have many memories of it, to be honest, just going down there and feeling really horribly awkward. And a lot of people, I think one of the amazing things that I don't hear people talk about very much is how um, gay people got used to going out on their own.
Yeah.
It's not something straight people really do. I mean, I don't know if they do it now, sorry, but I mean, my spirit was always went out with their friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you were gay, often you went out on your own. And particularly when well, obviously when I went to London, know anybody, so I went out on my own, whatever. But even here, you go out on your own because you didn't really, everyone was so closeted and everything was like that. And so you got used to it. And there was a real freedom in it once you got used to it. Like
Yeah.
you could go out and you'd make friends and you go out and you'd sort of like, you'd have to, I
It
really liked
forced
that.
you to have
It
those
forced you
social
to. It did.
interactions.
It did. And then and also it made you more part of a community. It's like if you go out with a group of friends, you tend to just talk to your friends.
Yeah.
So you have those. So you definitely have that. The people who hang around in cliques and they run around. They're usually the ones looking around their shoulders, probably bitching about people and kind of like. But also there's a real great camaraderie and they're all having a laugh. But there's that sense where they can be a bit exclusive. But
Yeah.
people on their own, they get up the dance floor and they start dancing to the person next to them, while they're standing at the bar. They start talking to the person next to them. They're in the
Yeah.
and it's sort of it just and so the place became there was a community sense there.
Yeah. Um,
Because you talk to people, so you would go down, you would know the barman, you would know the doorman, you would know the DJ, you'd know the regulars. So even if they weren't necessarily, you wouldn't call them friends, and you wouldn't have seen them outside of there or anything, you would go in and you go, hey, yeah, da, da, da. So you sort of knew if you were in trouble, or the people would sort of semi look out for you, or things, you built those sort of going out relationships, with people. But it was also very dangerous. I mean, it was a really dangerous thing to do.
yeah, you were going home on your own as
You're
well,
going home your own, and there was
usually.
people waiting around the bottom of the street, in gangs, to chase you. Not to, I mean, and there was, I heard awful stories of things that happened to people there. There was police sometimes, police be waiting on you and undercover police. I had a terrible experience with them. Anyway, we'll go into that, but with the police, undercover police, and put me in the car and then taking me to a house. It was absolutely horrible. It was
Yeah.
horrific. Oh God, it was horrific. I didn't think I was going to get out of there alive. But that wasn't I mean, that isn't unusual. I mean, I've heard. I mean, that really was a horrific story in the sense that I was really traumatized, but I
Well,
wasn't hurt. If you see what I mean. I mean, I've heard terrible, terrible things and things that went on and lasting, like people, being put in terrible positions. But also, there was things like, for example, let's say, this is a separate thing, not that, but like, but another danger would be like you might get off with someone and they say come back to mine and whatever. Let's say you're Catholic or they're whatever, and then you end up in the middle of the Shankill and there's no buses. And this is back in the day. Now we have a sort of semi reasonable bus service, but even at night it's still quite poor.
yeah.
Back in the day, the bus you maybe one bus an hour, maybe. Do you remember back from the city hall? There maybe at night. I think that they finished it. Was there an 11 o'clock bus? Maybe. But I mean, but it was one bus. There was no buses going across. I mean, and if you got a bus out to someone's house, Then you had to get a taxi home, or you were walking back from there. And if you're walking from the Shankill in the Ardoyne, I mean, you really are asked, because all those streets are blocked anyway.
Yeah.
So you're walking out of the Shankill on your own. You don't. I'd happened to one. I might do this, and I'd never been in the Shankill. There was no phone. You've no GPS. You've no map. I was in a, and I don't know how I ended up
And
stupid.
nobody knew where you were.
Nobody knew where I was because I hadn't told anyone. I didn't know where I was. And I thought, what the fuck have you done? But I was a bit drunk. I was, it was one of the first times I'd been with someone. I was like, and it was horrible. I mean, you get into, oh God, horrible situations. But back then it was so dangerous because you think now you're back to something to like, which I've done, like, you feel uncomfortable. You say go to the toilet and get out of there, and you get your GPS on, you got your app for your taxi and everything.
Yeah.
You don't have anything like that. So, you might be able to get yourself to a telephone box, and then you're going to phone an Ardoyne taxi to come into the Shankill Road during the Troubles to pick you up at 2 o'clock in the morning or something. They're thinking they're going to get shot, so they're never going to come, even if you had to. So, I mean, like situations like that, when you think, oh my God, the dangerous situations you put yourself in out of desperation, and it wasn't, of course, there's a sexual thing, you're sexually frustrated, and these are the times when you're, you know, that once a week when you could sneak out into town and do this. But it was also like, connection, just to want to be with somebody, the potential that you'd have feelings for, or that you would, that you could be this person that you had to hide all the time, and this was your time to do it. So you didn't really want to go home. You wanted it to last. You wanted to see, and you made stupid choices. And I think we all make stupid choices, especially when we're growing up, and when alcohol's involved and everything. And then but then you put in this sort of desperation of that, then you put in the troubles, and then you put in it's illegal to be gay, and then you put into, and like people took advantage of that. People took advantage of the fact that you were vulnerable. They took advantage of the fact that you're never going to tell anybody if you were attacked. If you were not going to tell anyone if you were sexually attacked, you're not going to tell anyone. If they dump you in the middle of the center, you're not going to tell anyone. So they take advantage of, and there are a lot of horrible things happen to people. And again, I don't think that side of things is talked too much. We get a bit nostalgic
Yeah.
about, we went down in the bar and it was all a big gag. Well, it actually wasn't a lot of the time. It was very dangerous. It was really frightening, and you really did risk a lot for love, and to be yourself, and to be gay was a massive risk, and you faced it every week on your own without really being able to share it with anyone, and you were in very, very dangerous situations.
Yeah. And not all of us made it.
Not all of us made it. No, terrible things,
So
terrible
at this
things.
point, I'm sure we'll put a notice at the start, but if anybody has been triggered or finds it difficult listening to this, please get in touch and we'll get you referred on for someone for counselling services or things like that.
Yep, sorry about that. Shouldn't.
No, that's part of your reality and your
Mm,
experiences, and that's what we're here to record,
mm.
because these are the experiences that are often lost and not recorded
Yeah,
as part of our history. So
and
that's what
also this
Queeritage is.
whitewashing as well of things.
Yes, making it
See
all
far
like,
too much about that happening, I think.
yeah. This episode is in 2 parts, and this is the end of part 1. To hear the rest of Paul's experiences, please join us for part 2.